Hi, and thanks so much for tuning into the Inhospitality Podcast. I'm Ty Justice.
I'm Simba.
And we're here talking about every aspect of hospitality by those who actually make it happen. And we're going to start off today with a little water cooler talk because there is a lot going on in the world of hotels at the moment. Let me see. We'll start off with me. My previous property, the beach property, which I gave my 2 weeks at, and by 2 weeks I mean last minute email the night before I quit.
You don't owe anybody an explanation.
That's true. That's true. Well, maybe the audience, because they might want to find
Yeah,
out
I mean,
why.
if you want the tea,
Right. We'll definitely get into that.
stay tuned.
But what the changes that have happened, and I talked about it being a union property, and that is very true. It's very much a union property. The union has struck very hard there. And two of the managers are now gone. Their positions are up on Glassdoor, if anyone's interested. I think. But what sucks is, I never really had a problem with these guys. These guys were not the issue necessarily. They always had a pretty good attitude. One of them especially, he was always very positive and very good, and I love the guy. I interviewed with both of them, and none of us are there anymore, which is really sad. But the attrition rate in hotels, as we talked about, especially in the last couple of years after the pandemic, the peak of the pandemic, has really changed the way hotels work. And turnover or attrition has been skyrocketing lately. And there's an article from The Conversation that talks about the same thing we've talked about in the last few episodes about turnover, toxic management, which is really sad. But the reason I bring up the previous hotel, the beach hotel, is because there was one particularly toxic manager that I can actually talk about now without naming, but she was a monster. And this is the thing. The one thing I will say honestly about her is that she did her job. She did her job to a certain degree. She was getting to the point where she was giving more of her work to her subordinate, who was a friend, and really worked hard as it was. And she was very inappropriate a lot of times. She thought at first when I started there I was on her side, so she would call him a little bitch. And I'm like, he works hard. If he says something about it, like, dude, leave him alone. And
she basically said, that's my little dog.
I know she honestly would treat him very poorly and talk about him extensively that way. And I could have called her out a lot of times, but she kind of liked me when I got there. We were talking about this offhand because
use it to your advantage.
Right. Oh, God, that would have been hard. I wasn't attracted to her at all.
Oh.
And I think that was the problem.
You can't give a wink every now and then.
It would make
then turn around.
That's exactly what would happen. No, and it wasn't as much the physicality of it. It's just kind of her attitude and the way she was. Yeah. Just like she was the toxic management. Otherwise, that place would have ran so much better, I think, in terms of attitudes and in terms of atmosphere. Because, especially with me, because, I liked that hotel. I enjoyed it very much. I liked my coworkers a lot. They were wonderful. Most of my coworkers, and and like for you to like most of your coworkers at a job, it's rare, and I enjoyed that.
This is true.
When we worked together, I did enjoy a good amount of our front desk.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we were cool, but at the Hollywood property, but at the Santa Monica property, I liked almost everybody, whether they liked me or not, I don't know, but I liked most of the people there. The housekeeping were great. The kitchen staff, the bar staff, everybody was cool. Food and beverage, the chefs were cool. Everybody was really neat, but she was just like this problem, only because when I started there, she kind of, like I said, she kind of had this crush. And I know because she would tell other coworkers, she would have like dreams about me, that she liked me. She said that she had sex dreams about me to other coworkers.
If a manager told me that, I would be like, can you say it again?
Into the mic?
Yes.
I know, and it became a problem because she was also kind of power hungry. So she wanted everybody to bow down to her and do all that. And that's not my style for anybody who knows me. So I'll joke around with you and respect your position. That's one thing. But if you abuse that power, which she kind of did, that's something different. I'll give it right back to you, and I would give it right back to her. And she started having a real big problem with that. And especially because I didn't like her back, she would fake fall just to touch me. It's like fake trip, go whoops, and then like grab onto me and stuff like
She's
that.
like, surprise trust fall.
I know exactly. Like, yeah, if only if it was, I could dodge it. But she would do those things. And then when I kind of didn't reciprocate, she would talk to other employees that she was close to and tell them to go to HR on me if they had an issue with me or if we had a disagreement or a misunderstanding. She would tell them to go straight to HR because she couldn't do anything to me herself, but she would try to get other people to do it. So yeah, that was really a pain in the ass. It created a problem over time. So when I finally left, I was just kind of done with that aspect of it and kind of sick of it. There were other parts of it too, but That was kind of it. But if it wasn't for her, and I don't know if a lot of people can relate to this, just like one bad apple spoiling the bunch,
Yeah.
she was definitely the bad
Oh,
apple. Yeah.
We always talk about how bad apples, it just over time spreads.
Yeah. Rots everything.
Rots everything.
But,
Yeah.
that was unfortunate. That was my tea for that. But then after this last strike, which was really intense, two of the higher up managers either quit or were fired. One I know was fired for sure, and felt bad about that. But we talk about alcoholism. We kind of joke about it from time to time because some of it's kind of comical and not.
Yeah.
But when you really think about it, it's kind of sad. And what I've come to notice, and I'm sure you have too, is that it amplifies once you get into this business and you're abused by it for a while if you're in a toxic hotel.
Yeah.
And, it leads to serious alcoholism. People that would be kind of like moderate drinkers, I think, or would be social drinkers, end up drinking on the job and just being drunk most of the time because there's that level of misery. Not that they're flawed individuals or they're horrible people. Because I think the one we referenced is Fifth, the Scotch, and we'll call him Fifth from now on. But not a bad guy. Not a bad guy.
Look, here's the thing is that there were multiple people at the front desk that would come,
Sauced to high heaven.
And I'm not saying they're bad people.
No.
All I'm saying is that when you're under the influence, you act different.
Yeah. And it's indicative of our industry, I think. Yeah. I've never been in an industry. I've been in a few industries, and I don't know if I've ever been around so many people who drink on the job. I mean, it's not like we're for the most part, handling heavy machinery, but it's
we're typing on computers.
We're typing
so heavy.
Exactly. But I remember one coworker who would go out for a walk. Great guy, tall. You know him. We all know him.
Yeah.
He came back once, and this guest was just ripping into him, and I was right next to him, and I just looked over. I go, "Hey," "What the hell's wrong with you?" I go, "Don't talk to him like that." And our friend is 6'5", huge, sweet guy, but huge guy. And I'm just like, "Hey," I go, "From now on, you talk to me." I go, "You don't talk to him anymore. You have any questions, you come straight to me." And I dealt with it. And later on, he told me, he's like, "I was so high, I had no idea what was even going on." I'm like, "Oh, well, that makes me feel great."
I would say, definitely can relate. There's been multiple situations, where a guest is just, laying into me, and I'm like, okay, well, when you put your credit card in, I'll give you the keys. Get right to the point. We can make this process so much faster right now. Right. And then, they'll leave, and I know most of the time you would, step in so it doesn't get too crazy. When I worked with you, but I actually was working with 6'5", and he was like, damn, what the, he was like, how did you handle that? He's like, I'm mad for you. And I was like, honestly, had a worse day than me. I just look at perspective like that, and to me, I'm like, I'm not gonna see you again.
It's a good perspective. It's kind of hard because in the moment, even like I said, even like you said, even though I wasn't being yelled at, when my team was, I'm just like, oh hell no, let's see where this goes, and then do the whole knuckle thing. But which kind of worked. It kind of calms people down. But it was just a good perspective to have is these people probably have a messed up day. And it's always easier in hindsight. When you're looking back, in traffic, you're like, but at the same day, you're like, well, maybe they're having an emergency or something like that. Yeah. My mom's always that type where she's like, maybe they just had a bad day. Maybe something crazy's going on, got some bad news. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, but they still cut me off.
Yes. No, if someone is excessive, off the clock, if someone is excessive, I'm like, this stupid.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But when I'm on the clock, I'm like, oh, I'm being paid.
Yeah. I know, yeah, and sometimes that's just part of the job. It's just dealing with angry people.
The guy did have a bad day. He was basically ranting to me and then trying to be and now you want to hit me with this shit. I'm like,
I was gonna be empathetic, but now I'm gonna give you a shitty room, dude. Sorry.
I'm like, hey, just put your card in.
Right, just I know this is.
You know what? Actually, I do. I kill him with kindness.
Yeah, and see, that's good. And see, when you can, it's good. Oh, see,
because they get mad confused. They're being so mean to you, and you're like, you know what, as long as you put your card in, we'll get you the keys. We'll get you to your room. And then he's like, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? And welcome to the Hollywood location.
Right.
This is 2 drinks on the house. It's your first time. And then they're like, because they're like, what? They just yelled at me, and I just gave them free shit right now.
Right. Yeah, and that makes them feel kind of guilty. And that kind of reminds me of a story I forgot about. when
Yeah, that was the whole point. You feel guilty still.
right? Yeah, asshole.
Yeah.
But no, that is, like I said before, that is a good perspective.
Yeah.
So the other day I was striking after I had sent my resignation, and I still struck with my my colleagues at the hotel.
Yeah.
And it was like a crazy strike. Like they were, really making strides. And one guy came out. I have video footage because I had to record. He was putting his hands on me, and yeah, it was one of those situations where the cops were called. And I love it when guests, like, first of all, we understand that the strike is inconvenient. It's loud. It's screwing up your stay. We get it. That's the point. It sucks, but that's what, strikes do. You got to kind of do that.
It's
but
for awareness.
When they call a police officer, what people don't realize is that the police are the largest union in the United States. They're the largest kind of brotherhood there is.
Yeah.
So, it's probably not going to go the way you think, especially in California, because in California you have a lot more rights as a striking worker.
Yeah, for sure.
But he started coming at me and just like, in my face. I'm just, and luckily I had earplugs in, so I didn't really hear much of it. But he's like, that's what it's like, and blah blah blah. And I'm like. And my mom wanted to go strike, because she supports the union as well. So she was out there just kind of like doing her thing a little bit, just sitting nearby. Then he started coming toward her. I'm like, oh, no. I go, you can do that to me. I go, but I will kill you, And then he was come up trying to record her and stuff like that. And, she can hold her own. But then I was so proud of my people because my boys from the kitchen.
I know, but I know your mom. You're out of all of the people in the crowd.
Right.
You chose her.
You chose the one that bakes cookies for everybody? Are you kidding me?
She literally, you walk in and she's like, a cookie?
Right, exactly. And, but he was coming after her. I'm like, And I turned just stone cold. I go, you do not touch her. And it was, he was getting too close. And then he kind of got the point, even though he was still angry. And then he went in and we're all just talk to management. It's them. You got to talk to the GM, get them to sign the contract. And the company lawyers were there that day too, so that was a whole thing. But he came back out, and he kind of was still kind of like, this guy's got an axe to grind. Either he wants to get violent, or there's something else. And I'm just looking at him going, there's got to be something else. So along with your point, kind of killing him with kindness, I'm like, okay, look, dude, I popped out one of my little earplugs. I'm like, let's go over here. I go, come with me. Come on, let's talk. Let's go. And before that, though, when he was getting too close to my mom, my boys from the kitchen and PBX came up behind me, and they're like, watch him try something. He's like, he was coming up on your mom. He's like, we were about to throw him in the street. I go, no, I appreciate that. And then, but when he came back, I go, come on, let's go talk. Come on. All right, you want to say something? Let's say it over here. Took him to the side. And, it was a situation where his daughter was there for surgery. His daughter was there, going for oncology kind of cancer stuff. And, he's probably in his mid-50s, and stuff like that. And, it's like, oh, you guys, and blah, blah, blah. And, it's one of those things where you talk him down. I'm like, look. Because I'm like, I'm sorry about your daughter. He's like, I don't want to hear your fake apologies and blah, blah, blah. I go, look, it's not that. I go, I came from healthcare before this, home healthcare. I was taking care of the elderly and the disabled. I've had disabled people in my family my entire life.
Yeah.
So I get it. I know it's difficult. And this is just something that has to happen. Well, in California, I go, yes, in California, this is, what it comes down to. We have a lot of options. But the reason we're doing this is because this is the only option left to us, and I go, because he does negotiations for companies and things like that. I'm like, look, dude, I go, you got to know, in other states, you can't do this, but we fought for this right. And this is the thing, you have to understand that us doing this is antithetical to what we are trained to do. We're in hospitality. So making you uncomfortable and screwing up your stay is the opposite of what we've learned and trained to do all these years and what we take pride in. I go, you have to understand. So we went through this whole conversation, got him down to tell me what was wrong with his daughter. I go, look, man, I go, you're a good dad. I go, if I was in your position, maybe I would do the same. I go, I get it, and I understand that it's inconvenient. I go, the hotel should have told you. And the thing is, if you're going to a hotel that's under strike, and the strikes can happen at any moment, it's the job of the hotel to phone you or to email you and be like, look, strikes can break out at any time. And if they don't tell you that, you need to get all your money back, because it's their obligation. If they don't want to do it, they're lying to you, because they know. And they will they'll be like, oh my God, it was a surprise. We didn't know this was going to happen. You did know this was a possibility. Stop lying to the guests.
Yeah, for sure.
But got him down to a certain level to where he felt shame. You could tell after that, my mom came up. My mom, after I was talking to him, I was talking to her for about 10 minutes. My mom came up she was about to be like, and another thing. I'm like, no, mom, it's okay. It's okay. He's fine. He's cool. It's all right. Let's not make it worse now. I just got him down. All right. And then, my mom started talking to him a little bit, but you could tell he was still almost confused, but at the same time kind of ashamed, because, I made him kind of understand. But then killing him with kindness that way, because it could have gone easily one of two ways. Yeah. And that hospitality training really kind of kicked in. I'm like, let me listen to this guy. And, he's having a really shitty day. I get it. And kind of like what you were saying, just killing them with kindness, and then and then you make it better for your coworkers, because then that person's not going to blow up on somebody else you work with, And even though I wasn't working at the hotel anymore, I didn't want him doing that to my people, because they're still my people, you know what I mean? So I didn't want them getting tore up for something that I could have de-escalated. Because that those managers sometimes, man, they don't help de-escalate. Sometimes they'll just make it worse, and you're like, yeah, stop.
They'll be like, are they still out there?
I know they're hiding. Oh my God. But yeah, that's kind of the tea that's going on in my previous hotel now, and in the industry in general. Yeah, there's a lot of strikes going on, and there's a lot of angry guests, and hotels do not want to warn you, because what happens if they warn you is you'll cancel your reservation, be like, oh, there's a chance of a strike. No, maybe I'll wait until the strike is over, and they see lost revenue, which it is.
I'm stuck in the room.
Or you got to leave all day because the strikes will happen all day. So that's the industry. But if they don't inform you that when you make your reservation somehow this is a possibility, definitely fight for that refund or those a free night. Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely, for sure. I never have went through a hotel strike before, so that's very interesting to learn about, because I have no idea how the motions even go or anything like that.
In California, you can get onto your property with union leadership, and you can go in the lobbies if you find a way in and start, because some of my people were doing that. They were in there yelling, screaming, chanting, and in the restaurant in that, for a limited amount of time, and then they can they do that, then they get kicked out. But it's all legal in this state, because it's a very heavily unionized state compared to other states. It's not a right to work state or anything, right to work. But I hate that phrase. But and it's intense, and here, there. I mean, in Santa Monica, there's an ordinance to where I think you can't use drums or any loud instruments before 8 a.m. Right when 8 a.m. comes by, bam, bam, bam. I hit those drums hard.
Oh my gosh, they have drums?
Drums, yeah. The union will collect drums, and they'll get stuff like that. So, yeah, I was there right at the manager's office banging hard, so they would, remember that we were there. But, that was...
Can you hear me?
I know. But and the thing is, I don't think people realize about hotel workers in general is that it's technically full-time and seasonal work. And what I mean by that, and I wanted to talk about that, is people don't understand, like, yeah, even if you get paid like $25, $27, $30 an hour, that's great. But you got to remember, during the slow seasons of like December through February, you work very little, and they cut your hours. Even though they say you're full time, you can get maybe one day a week or less. You can maybe work once every 2 weeks, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And I've had these arguments myself, because it's happened to me. So a lot of times, even if you get paid a certain amount of money, if you don't have the hours to fulfill that wage, it really doesn't mean as much, because your money has to go a lot further, like a teacher in summer break. And it's unfortunate. So people don't realize that even though hotel workers, even if you work at a very expensive hotel, 5-star hotel, and get paid somewhat decent money for the industry, which not everybody does, your hours are cut. And sometimes what happened at my previous hotel in Santa Monica is ownership wanted to cut corners, because another company bought into them, and like, we need to cut corners. And the GM was known for his previous hotel of cutting food and beverage by 30%. And of course, he didn't do that by being ingenious or promoting the restaurant or doing anything like that. You do it by cutting people's hours and their livelihood and kind of jacking up their lives, just so it looks good on your resume. So that's what he was doing at the hotel that I was at in Santa Monica, and the ownership was like, we need to cut hours. So even during days where we were full up, front desk agents were like 1, and 1. So you had 3 agents for the entire day, or 2 agents sometimes for the entire day. 1 a.m., 1 p.m., and like 1 manager that didn't know what they were doing.
Sounds familiar.
Right? I know, exactly. But yeah, there's a lot of that happens in the industry that nobody talks about. Understaffing is huge, and it doesn't matter sometimes what you get paid, because if you're not working those hours, your rent's still due at the end of the month.
Yes, yeah. At the job I currently have now, during the last 2 weeks of the year, almost like no work for us. So it's like we still have to prepare for those last 2 weeks. Yeah. Because I mean, you do get paid out like your vacation and sick time. Mm-hmm. But other than that, like, no hours. Wow. None.
Yeah, and that's a problem with a lot of like service industry stuff, is that people don't realize that the hours. That's what people don't realize about service industry, is that hours are one thing, wage is one thing, but also proper staffing and guaranteed hours. That's what I liked about my first property, the French property, in Beverly Hills is that you were guaranteed 32 hours at least. So for the most part, you got that. This was technically pre-pandemic, but it was still, you were under contract as a full-time employee. Hotels sometimes don't do that. They're like, well, no, you'll be full-time. You'll never have to worry. When I was being onboarded for my Santa Monica property, my third property, they're like, yeah, no, I was like, yeah, there'll be slow times, but you don't have to worry about that. It's rarely going to happen. Then we went through renovations, and like for 9 months, like for a couple months back to back, I worked every week. I worked 2 days a week, and that was it. And they made these big promises, and I was employee of the month. The second month I was there, the third month I was there, and all this stuff. And then I'm like, what is going on with you people? How do you
even know my work integrity?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I was doing the most. It was because I wanted to just hit the ground running, and it was great. But then when a company, and I want to hear your perspective on this. When a company doesn't respond, when they make all these promises like, oh, no, you're going to be great, we're going to move you up in the system, and you're going to do all this, and then you work hard, and they're like, yeah, got to screw you. It's like, sorry, but, we're just going to work you because you're the lowest on the totem pole. It doesn't matter how hard you work, and, and all that. And it's disappointing, and it demotivates you.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely put in my 2 weeks for shit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your 2 weeks are funny when you put it in.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have like any, like I had, at the Hollywood location, I was like stuck there. Like I did not have any intentions on moving up. At the Beverly Hills location I was at, I did have intentions of moving up, and they hired some Joe Schmo who didn't know jack shit off the street. No. So I literally was like, that was like the last straw. I was like, no, like I've been talking to you guys for this for like a fucking year, like.
Yeah, no.
And then they're like, well, we don't have anyone else to fill your job, and I'm like, because you guys don't pay enough in my department. You guys don't have enough, like, you're not doing any incentive to make people actually want to stay and learn like I have done and put the time in for you guys.
I see, that's the problem with doing your job too well.
Yeah.
And that sucks. People are like, oh, quiet quitting. Yeah, because I'm telling you, like, loud working doesn't always pan out, because you do your job really well. And we've talked about this before, but when you do your job too well, they want to keep you there. Because you're like, oh, well, you're too valuable to promote, or some nonsense like that.
Yeah.
And that just drives me up the wall. And it's like, that's why people quit, because that's toxic management, because if you really want to move up in the company, people should be like, yeah, we'll move you up, and then you being that, having that experience as a manager, then you will train people to do what you did, and you'll have that motivation for them. You're like, look at me, I moved up in the company, I did A, B, and C, I started out where you started out. But you have people like that are just jumping in off the street, like you said, some Joe Schmo who didn't know anything, had to be trained.
Yeah.
Like, you'd rather have that guy, I mean, it's just, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because you're going to lose good employees.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, at the Hollywood location, it was like constant Joe Schmo off the street. So, but at that point I was like used to it, right? I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you're like, nothing's happening here. I'm not moving anywhere in this company.
I was like, I make the same as you, and you're supposed to be ahead of me.
Well, yeah, that's the thing with our incentive structures. When you especially, and me in the past, what we would do is that we would make as much as the managers made.
Yeah.
And just
less responsibility.
And it's like, why would we want to do your job? Like, what's the incentive for that?
Yeah, I've had managers be like, oh, like, you should be wanting to do extra and wanting to move up. He's like, you have good potential, and I'm like, no. Mm-mm.
Not if I'm making your money, buddy.
Yeah, I'm like, if I'm making the same amount as you, you ain't seeing me working 7 days a week, coming in jeans.
Right, exactly. Because there's an article that I was looking at. We were talking about it I was talking about it a minute ago on the Conversations website, and it talks about that. And a lot of people have to work multiple jobs. Yeah. Like, if you're a manager, you definitely shouldn't have to work 2 jobs. But usually you don't. You're just getting by. But for a lot of the under the line employees, front desk, housekeepers especially, line cooks and all that stuff, they'll work in multiple places. Like I said, there was a gentleman who worked in housekeeping at the Hollywood location, the Classic Hollywood Hotel. And he also worked at Domino's. Like, this is a full-time employee. Like, he was in his 50s, like late 50s, early 60s, working 2 jobs. I feel bad because I never went to go see him at Domino's, get a pizza from him. But he's a nice guy. We'd always change in the locker room. We'd have, different shifts, and, people would go hide in the locker rooms on their breaks too, so they couldn't be bothered. But it was one of those things where he told me, like, yeah, I worked 2 jobs, and he wasn't the only one. And in this article, it talks about how a lot of people, one of the reasons for attrition and such high turnover is because of how little most people in hotels get paid for doing all this extra work. And these companies skirt the lines when it comes to OSHA and how much they're supposed to clean and how much they're supposed to do in a day and how many hours they're supposed to work, how many units they're supposed to work. So it's understandable that, people are just quitting and, as the article says, not coming back. Like, I think in November 2021, it said that over 1.2 million people left the hospitality industry never to return. They're just like, I'm never doing this again. And that's it. And it's understandable because of what we've seen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, for sure. There's just unbelievable stories. Like, who raised you?
Right. Yeah, I know.
Who raised
Because
you?
and I've said this before, and I think in most industries it's the same. If your management has your back, if you're good management, which usually comes, not always, but usually comes from you working your way up through the system because you know the system. Like you say, housekeeping, front desk, management, usually, you have an idea of what they go through, and so you can empathize without being a pushover.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can empathize. But if your management does not have your back, they're afraid of people taking your position. We've talked about that. People taking your position, and they're just constantly terrified of losing their job to you, which sometimes happens. Sometimes you get screwed over in the business, but that's just corporate America in general. But, if you're that type of person, it makes the job 10 times harder because, screaming guests are screaming guests. That's it. Somebody their room didn't get cleaned on time, or, they didn't get the room they wanted, or they don't like the view, or we don't have a certain kind of food that they used to get 10 years ago. That's not there anymore.
Do you know how many years ago that company stopped producing those?
I know. It's like they were toxic. They killed people. Stop asking for them.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting that, again, we go back to this because it's about management. It is.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line in hotels.
Oh, for sure.
In other industries, it's the same thing. Your management is toxic. You're going to leave. People don't quit jobs. They quit managers. And it's unfortunate because we've known some good managers.
Oh, yeah.
And their managers suck. So they become depressed or they become laxed. They become drinkers.
I've definitely seen upper management kill lower management. Easy.
Yeah, because it's not only about us versus management.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels that way, but sometimes your management genuinely wants to help you, but their management doesn't want to help them. And they're kind of stuck and being not only the bad guy, but they're stuck just kind of not being able to do anything to help like they want to help you.
Yeah.
So it's not always that all managers are bad. It's just that, sometimes their hands are tied as well. And, they, unlike below the line, what I call below the line, unlike front desk housekeepers and all that stuff, they're pretty easily dismissed. I mean, it's hard to kind of fire a manager because once somebody's a manager, especially in the Hollywood location we worked at, they could do all bunch of out-of-pocket stuff and still be okay.
It takes a lot to catch up to you.
Yeah, it takes a lot. But then those are always the jacked up ones. If you notice, it's always the ones that screw up royally, screw over their people, and are just complete jerks that keep their job. But then the ones that are actually genuinely trying to help you, they're like, no, we can't have you do that.
I feel like the ones that are the sheep are the ones that get kept.
Yeah.
The ones that sit there and they're saying no, because they said no.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
No. Even though ethically it's wrong.
No, well, we were talking about this. Tell the story about how at the Hollywood property, managers would try to change things in the meetings with the GM.
Yeah, because we get new managers and I always feel for them because they're like, we need to change this. I'll talk to them. And they would go and be like, hey, I think that we should change this aspect because this happens and nobody else in this seems to engage what's happening. We always fall short because housekeeping short staffed. It's a constant rotation. Maybe we should do this. And they'd be like, huh. You're pretty controversial today, aren't you?
That's the GM talking to the manager.
Yes.
Why do you want to be controversial?
Yes, asking
Why do you
him,
want to start problems, basically?
he was because there are major miscommunications that happen in hotels.
Yeah.
So it was he was addressing that with housekeeping and sales, and we need to know, and you guys need to communicate along with us, and not just clock out and go home, blah blah blah, and
leave us holding the bag.
Yeah, oh hey, what's happening?
Right, and this is a front desk manager talking to the GM
Yeah.
in one of their debriefings that they would have once a week or something like that.
It's once they get shot down, they're like, okay, I'm out of here.
I know, oh well, I tried.
Well, there was no fixing that.
Yeah, and it's not because they couldn't, but the GM simply didn't want to, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a thing too. If you're in a meeting with the head management of every department and stuff like that, having that whole group conversation. and they shoot you down in front of everybody, you're kind of like,
yeah, and the head of it all is like, why are you trying to create trouble?
Yeah.
It's not trouble. We're trying to create efficiency. And that manager, and the managers weren't at the front desk. The managers weren't talking about like major changes. They were just basically talking about communication.
Yeah.
And
a lot of lost communication. Like
lost
that would
communication.
help just so much in the long run.
Send an email. Just give like a brief breakdown of the events that are happening, what we need to know, instead of being completely effing clueless.
You cannot, when there's a major event going on, be like, sorry, I didn't have time to send it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
you've known about it how long?
You're the one that put this event together. Like,
Yes.
Yes. What are you doing? Like, yeah, just shoot people an email, communicate. But there's a lot of ego involved too, unfortunately. Yeah. But to the point where that's why a lot of things were so problematic at that property, is because it wasn't just it couldn't be done or it would cost money, because they wasted money like crazy on events that were poorly put together. And, it's so much, because you have to have, for a small event, you have to have staff, and you have to have proper staffing. You have to have, like, let's say you have something at the pool, and like, you have a week to prepare for this thing, which is dumb. Then you have like, the bar staff, you have the wait staff, you have the kitchen staff. All those people have to be paid for that event while they're there. You know what I mean?
Not to mention,
and you don't
like, because they
advertise
always, if the pool is closed, we already are having to do compensations. If we know a week in advance or anything like that, we could contact the guests, cancel the reservations, get the business people in who know they're not going to use the pool. We don't do that. We just are trying to cash cow it.
Yeah. And just be like, too bad. Oh, you wanted to come for our pool because it's the biggest one and blah, blah, blah. Tough.
I'm pretty sure we did like $8,000 in compensations in one weekend. Just on like food and beverage credit and stuff like that. Just because people were not able to use the pool and didn't know until they checked in.
Yeah, and that's the reason they would go to that hotel.
Yeah, the
Hollywood
hotel was so known for the pool, so it was just kind of like, you got to tell people.
Yeah.
Like if someone walks in and they don't have a reservation, I understand, But if they've had a reservation for months.
Or they come from another country, you don't tell them until they get there.
Yeah, or they tell them like the day of, they send an email like, why are you sending it the day of?
Right.
Like.
And that's why I think we would give so much food and beverage compensation. You and I both, especially, because it would just become so ridiculous that, you'd feel for the guests, and you're like, well, let me give you $300 in food and beverage credit for your 2-night stay.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, yeah. I literally have had people come up and be like, you gave him 200 and gave him 250. I was like, did I?
Here's 50 more.
I was like, here's 225. I'll meet you in the middle.
Right,
It was like 3 different people checking in.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know. Yeah, because one check-in will hear what the other check-in's
Yeah, that's
getting,
like what was happening.
Like, well, right.
He was like, I got 200 and I got 250. And he's like, so you gave my friend here 200 and my other friend 250. What are you going to give me? And I was like, 225.
There you go. Yeah. There's only one of you, But I think that's we joke about it. But at the same time, I think that's good. That's good compensation, and it is good because honestly, it doesn't cost.
If you get $200, like
that's like $6 worth of food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Come on, in reality of the actual cost of the food, it's nothing. You pay like your cooks and everything, but they're getting paid anyway.
They're
so
on the clock.
Exactly. I feel bad for the servers who don't get tipped though, because a lot of times when you give a lot of food and beverage compensation, the tips kind of dry up a little bit, which sucks. But with angry guests, you got to compensate them somehow.
Yeah.
And I think after a while, if you truly feel for the guest and you're not like a total corporate sheep or tool, you're going to think about the guest first. And I know that sounds counterintuitive. You're like, well, for the company, yeah, the company is one thing, but the company is a hotel, and the hotel is hospitality, and hospitality is people.
Yeah.
And that's how you bring people back. And I love that my first property would teach you that it takes 20 to 25 times the amount of money to coax a new person to stay at your hotel and to come back than to just keep someone who's already coming back happy. And it's like, you spend a few $100 here on them, that's fine, because in the long run, if they come a couple of times a year, that's thousands and thousands of dollars you're going to gain. I mean, you got to give to get. At the front desk, you understand that, but at the same time, corporate, they don't get it sometimes.
Trust, I understood that.
Right.
I understand.
I mean, it's funny, but I mean, it's all a weird kind of, it's a weird limbo. It's a place where there's not a lot of rules.
I understand like the business side of it, but sometimes I feel like it's easier for them to just sit in the back and say it's business than to actually be dealing with the situation up front.
Yeah, because we have to deal with it. We have to deal with the incompetence of the other departments, or the forgetfulness. Maybe they don't send an event notice, or the pool is closed for a last minute event. That would drive us nuts too, because it was like, well, somebody just bought out the pool this morning. And I'm like, what about these? It's summer.
No, they did not.
Yeah, they
did not.
Yeah, come on. Like most of the time, that was nonsense. They just forgot to send the memo.
Yeah, I was literally like, there's no way. Like, we have heard about this event. There's no way that, we decided to go. No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
There's that too. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because the guests are always going to be the last people thought of because that's just kind of what they do. But it's unfortunate. But that's why in hotels, I think it's a good idea to, just to have a good level of communication. But see, we talked about today a lot of how toxic management derails that over time.
Yes.
And I think the best thing to do is to make sure you communicate fully with your team. I mean, hotels are stressful. It's a stressful business. But if you have the wherewithal to be like, oh yeah, by the way, guys, shoot out a quick email. These are our VIPs, or this is the event we've got, and have detailed coverage of or detailed information that just tells you pool's going to be closed, this area is going to be closed specifically because you need to know that offhand, and your people need to know that if you want less disturbed guests, so you inform these people when they check in. But yeah, that's just a perspective that we have working at the front desk and dealing with a lot of angry guests when it comes to last minute events and management being toxic and a little incompetent.
Yeah.
But, all it takes is a little communication. I mean, it takes training. You just got to train yourself to do that, to be like, let me see who, and it's not about who you think is important. Just put it out there. Just put it out there to your people just so they know, even if it's redundant. If redundant information is still better than no information, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's still going to be like, this is the guy they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And you help your crew that way. I mean, like I said, redundancy is there for a reason in hotels, and it needs to be reiterated to every department so everybody's just well informed. I'd rather be over informed than under.
Yeah.
At any point.
Yeah. No. These toxic managers, dude. Yeah.
I know.
I've definitely had like a sales department person. Like, it was like a $300,000 wedding or something like that. Like, they had the the little restaurant, the lobby, like everything cleared out.
Yeah.
And like the groom came up to me. We were like mad late on the
rooms.
The room.
Yeah, rooms weren't ready on
and
time.
we had to give her fourth floor.
Fourth floor is very loud in that hotel. Yeah.
It's bad. It's bad. You can't. No. Yeah. It's bad. So I felt bad already, but there was she didn't have time. Yeah. She did not have no other option. Like, she needed a room now. Like, and I'm like, I'm not gonna be pushing a wedding back.
Right, exactly.
I ain't gonna do it.
Yeah.
So I told her the situation and got her into the room, and then the groom comes down. He's like, hey, is blah 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 there? I need to talk to her and just go over a few things because he had a $300,000 wedding at the hotel, and so I go and I call the person in the back. I'm like, hey, I have blah 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 in front of me. He just had a few questions for you, and she's like, well, what does he need? I'm about to clock out.
Tough.
I'm like, I'm not sure. It's awkward because the guest is literally looking at me. You would think that if you spent $300,000 and you asked the manager, hey, can I just go over a few things, before the rest of the day continues?
Yeah.
They would be more than happy to get their ass up and go and answer your questions. But it was like, I'm clocking out. What do they need? I'm like, I don't know. I've never done a wedding before.
Yeah.
So
I'm not in sales. I'm not a salesperson. This is your job.
I am a front desk agent.
Yeah. Get your butt out here and talk to your client.
I don't know. He wants to know what time his wedding's happening.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry, I didn't ask him. What do you need help with for your wedding?
Right, I know.
Like,
exactly.
I could help him.
Exactly, and that's the thing. You don't have the approval at the front desk, and that's what kind of ticks me off about that. Is like these are their clients. This is their commission, and they expect you to kind of do the legwork for them.
Yeah.
And like I'm not a sales agent. I'm not getting your commission unless you want me to get a cut of it. Get out here and do your job. And that good salespeople will always be there. And it's like, if you're having a wedding or something like that going on, like if this person keeps coming to me, I'm going to give them your cell phone number.
Personal.
Yeah, I will give them address and personal details so they can find you. If you keep trying to put us through this.
Like, we already f***ed up the room.
Right. Yeah.
And now you don't want to come out and talk to him about just basic. He's not even asking about the room, basic information.
He's
for
not
the
even
rest.
mad. Yeah.
Like, I was like, so I was like, I cannot believe this is happening right now. Like, I was like, let me help you plan it.
Right, I know, exactly. And look, if we had the training, sure, no, that wouldn't necessarily be a problem.
Yeah, well, if I had the training, then I'd have a better...
Exactly, we'd be in sales. But as opposed to just being salesmen at the front desk, which in another episode, we're going to talk about that.
Yes.
How companies try to make front desk agents salespeople, but without the commission. That should be a lead into the next one. But it's kind of a pain, and communication is key for a good flow in a hotel and hospitality in general. To be your best, you have to have people that communicate with you and let you know what's going on, so you can be prepared. Because it's not only preparing for one aspect of it, it's preparing for this certain situation and this certain guest and this certain event. When things go wrong, and inevitably they will go wrong because it's a hotel. But yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. No. Story of the sales department, right?
Yeah, I know. It's unfortunate. I wish, there needs to be a good mediary that will be at a hotel that their only job is to make sure every department communicates with each other.
Yes.
They're probably, like, people think that's management. That's not management. People are busy kind of in their own departments, in their own worlds. And there needs to be somebody that just goes around and it knows everything that's going on, knows the events in like a pass down from the early morning, know what goes on from day to day, and just make sure communication is clear between all departments so things happen. But that's a fantasy. That's a fantasy of everybody.
I literally thought
in
of someone, I can't say the name, but like once I say the name, dude, you're gonna lose it.
Oh,
and then I
no.
was like, wait, what was his job then?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I know, exactly. Oh, I don't. Even people that have that job, it's supposed to be their job. They don't do it. It's just it's so disjointed. But hopefully in the future that will happen. I think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Ty Justice.
I'm Simba.
And we'll see you at check-in.